Let me just say, this guy, Jonan, he, I think, is one of the best developers I've ever met. Smarter than most humans, and certainly more beautiful as measured by volume. So this is a little presentation called Robolove. My name is Jonan, and I love Ruby on Rails. And Ruby on Rails is all of you, so thank you for coming here and making this conference what it is. It means a lot to me. I'm just going to continue away from my two laptops as if everything was perfectly normal. This is sometimes what I am known as on the internet. I like the trick where Akira gets just to sit here until he gets all the followers he wants on GitHub. So until everyone here follows me on Twitter, I'm not changing the slide. We're just going to stand here. This is Twitter chicken, people. Come on. Actually, unfollow. No! This is the Down with Jonan corner. Ignore them. So this Twitter handle actually reads Leetbot for those who Leet speak, which might have been a funny joke at some point. It really wasn't funny to begin with, but now it's just kind of old, and nobody understood it in the first place. So I've got these numbers. I'm the guy with all the numbers in his Twitter handle, and I'm stubborn enough not to change it. But if you'd like to type those numbers, we should talk sometime. It'd be fun. So I'm from Portland. I work for a company that you probably have heard about. We make internet things, New Relic. Has anyone here used New Relic? You've got New Relic in your apps? That's a really good choice. I once said to someone that I would not work at a company that didn't have New Relic, and that was before I worked at New Relic. And I still say that, actually, because it's pretty amazing. I don't think I'm willing to do the job that you want me to do if you won't let me see the data to do it. So if you are interested in maybe also being a Relic or moving into the Portland area, we're pretty much a local company. If you have dreams of remoting in to work at New Relic, because of our office and culture, and I can espouse on this later, but I think it makes much more sense to have in-office employees, and the company promotes that as the plan. So I think remote is great, and if you have a company that is built to support that, then it works great. But in our case, we're all up in Portland, and we would love to have you. So if you're interested in that plan, go to bit.ly Ruby on Data and look at what jobs are available now, or tweet at me if you can remember those numbers, or don't. Also, it's good. So I'm going to talk to you about robots, because they're adorable. And my robots, they have a little bit of a Ruby in them, and they have a little bit of a Lego in them, and they've got some Raspberry Pi. And they're pretty fun. I like them a lot, but I want to tell you why I did that instead of how I did that. And I'm going to tell you how a little bit. But the motivation for me is more relevant at this particular time in my life. So I apologize for this. This is a quote from Thoreau. I should not talk so much about myself if there were anybody else whom I knew as well. I'm going to talk about myself for rather a long time. And I apologize in advance for that. But hopefully you will gain something from this. So I don't know how many of you know this. Some of you have my backstory, but I took kind of the long way around to this software stuff. A lot of people graduated with CS degrees and went straight to work, and now you have been doing this for 15 years. That's not my picture. So I wrote a little bit of BASIC when I was a kid. A lot of us did that. Who wrote BASIC? Yay, BASIC! I wrote a journal in my Apple IIe and password protected it, and then it would like mock my sister when she tried to guess the password, and she's like, I'll just turn it off because you don't know how to save your programs, noob. I got owned. Okay. I also programmed one of these. Did anyone program one of these? Yeah? Calculator programming. It's really interesting because to transfer programs on these, this was long before the internet. We had little cables. And there was actually internet. I'm teasing, but it wasn't like we have now, right? We had AOL. It doesn't count as internet. So you would plug your calculators together with this little cable and transfer the programs around. And there was this weird, like, pre-social network social network that came up around blackjack games in math class. And you would, like, I wrote a blackjack game, and then I grew up in Ashland, Oregon, and South Medford's science team came up with a better blackjack game that put mine to shame, and I was so embarrassed I had to up my game all weekend coding on the calculator. It's a strange environment. So I did a lot of programming like that when I was growing up, and I did a little in high school, but really I didn't program much more until I got to the University of Oregon. And I studied Java for a couple of years, and strangely, I quit forever after that. I actually, I have a friend named Chuck Vose who's a really smart and caring man, and he has on his Twitter, Chuck is awesome. He has on his Twitter profile, or did at one point, whatever you use to build your dreams is fine with me. And that absolutely embodies how I feel about Java and any other language in the world. If you are living your passion, then I am cheering for you the whole way. So I happened to, yes, right? Good Chuck. I happened to study some Java at school, and I was looking ahead at a future of cubicle farms, and my friends were having kind of a tough time. This was like 1998, 99. Things were pretty bumpy for software people, and it looked kind of terrible to me. And so I bailed, and I got a degree in Japanese. And what you do with a Japanese degree, as soon as you graduate, actually, is you play a lot of Diablo 2. I don't know if anyone has played this game, but it's pretty sweet. And if you play for like 16 or 18 hours a day, you can amass a lot of items, as it turns out. So I started selling those items on the internet, and I got into HTML, and I made a little HTML website so I could sell hacked game items to people on Diablo 2. I know, right? So then I was doing this. I was selling these hacked game items, and in the Diablo 3 patch update, remember this the next time you patch your software, you could just be ruining someone's life. It came out, and they took away all the hacked items, and they closed all the exploits, and it was done. Like, my website was killed, my business was over overnight. And to be quite honest, like, this was a pretty unhealthy time in my life. Like, I spent an unreasonable amount of time playing video games and sitting in front of my computer and typing HTML and selling things online to barely get by. And so, when all of my vast wealth from Diablo 2 disappeared, what I did is I started selling magic cards on the internet. This is a Mox Ruby. This card, this little tiny piece of cardboard is worth $1,000. Oh, sorry, that one's beat, Natalie says. It's not, yeah. It is beat up, but they're worth rather a lot of money for a tiny piece of cardboard. I didn't sell any Mox Rubies. I was kind of the bargain basement magic reseller online. But again, it was kind of like, I didn't have a lot going for me, to be quite honest. Like, if I look back at my life objectively, I spent the better part of a year indoors and just programmed on my HTML site that wasn't that good, and sold magic cards and played Magic and played Diablo, and like, this was a pretty dark period of my life. I was super depressed. Like, it was not a healthy place for me to be. And then I met Becky, and she's amazing. She kind of, she came to me and she said, like, you should be a grown-up, And so I did. And as part of my adventures in being grown up, I started out as a banquet server, and it was exactly like this, actually. Serving to fine lords and ladies at a banquet hall. I was a Hilton banquet server when I began, and I was making $10 an hour, and I was stoked. So much money. My friend hooked me up with the job. And it was great, actually. Like, I got to know a lot of people. I met someone who I later started bouncing with, because I was into security then. That's what happens when you're 6.5 feet tall. Someone's like, hey, you look like a door. Come with us. Right? You're approximately door-shaped. Again, $10 an hour, not super awesome. We found a Glock in someone's coat one time in the coat check, and I was like, 10 times dead? No, I'm out. And I left. And I stopped bouncing, and I became, at that same Hilton where I was a banquet server, the concierge. And that was a sweet gig, actually. I learned to make a martini, and to pour white wine that I overcharged for, and to get people tickets and things and other things that I will not announce on video. But I'll tell you, over some scotch at O'Kane's. So I was a concierge, and this was pretty legit. I was still part-time hourly, but it worked out okay. And I met some people across the street at a bar after work who were running a poker room. And this guy, Kelly, was the owner of the poker room, and he was sitting there in a game with me one time. I'm playing poker. I was with the cook of the Hilton. we're playing poker, and Kelly's like, I need another dealer. Does anyone know anyone who deals? And I had just dealt a home game that previous Saturday, and I was like, yeah, I got it. I'm a poker dealer, actually. I'm like president of the Poker Dealers Association, probably the best that you'll ever have. And so I became a poker dealer. And again, like, not a super awesome time. I was a poker dealer, and I was hanging out with a lot of gamblers, and I was playing poker eventually for a living and doing okay. Like, we went about a year where all of our income came from me playing poker and my wife working at Blockbuster, and we paid the rent, you know. I played online, I multi-tabled, low stakes, hold'em, if anyone is interested in that kind of thing. I know Carrie is. So we can all talk about that at another time, but I was dealing poker, and I was playing poker for a living, and then this happened. And this is my daughter, Kaya. Did someone just say no heart? Was that you, Zach? No, you're dead to me. This is my daughter Kaya on her second retake of her second grade or her first grade picture. So we let her choose her clothes in this one. We did not in this one. Let your children choose their clothes. That's the moral of the story. So I found out I was going to have a daughter, and turns out in America, if you're poor and you're going to have kids, you're going to die on the streets alone. So, so what we decided to do instead was I was going to get a job at a corporation, like an official corporation. This was a thing you used to have to do if you wanted to, like, get medicine and talk to doctors, right? Back in the day. You don't have to do that anymore. We have this communist healthcare stuff going on here. Viva la resistance! So I got a job selling cars. I sold Hondas. This is a great, this is the Insight's revenge, actually. I loved the Insight. That was a great car. The interesting thing to me about this photo is this is a Honda Insight in the foreground, and in the background is the Hyundai logo. It's the wrong brand. That is often mistaken for our brand, but nobody likes that. So I sold cars for a long time. And I was still dealing poker at this time, and I was still playing poker, but I had a real job, and at my real job, I had health insurance, so that was pretty sweet. But I don't know if anyone has ever sold cars. Raise your hand if you've sold cars. Yeah? Nice. All right, we got some car salesmen here, and women. No? Yes? In any case, like, this was a job that required you to be there for about 12 or 14 hours a day, and you're walking around a lot making minimum wage, and you find someone who maybe wants to buy a car, and you get them inside, and they want the lowest price because they found it on the internet, and the price is right here, and you make $100, like every 3 hours, right? So more months than not, you make minimum wage during the time when I was selling cars, because this was like the beginning of the crash, actually. And my first month, I sold like 12 cars, and then it was like 8, 6, 2, 0, 0, and I was out. So when you're selling cars, you work incredibly hard, and you sometimes make decent commissions. But it is more often than not a great job. And I was doing that, and I was working as a poker dealer at the same time at that card room. And I was playing for a little bit of side money, and I was making HTML brochureware for little mom and pop businesses. That went terribly, as you might imagine. It was a misguided attempt to be a programmer, actually, because I didn't actually know any programming. I could make HTML things, and I could CSS them, but that's not websites, right? So I was doing that, and I was also consulting at the Hilton to run their corporate training program and instill new recruits with the Hilton spirit. I'm serious. That was a real job, and I had it. So I had 5 jobs. I was working about 100 hours a week. I would come home after my family was asleep, and I would get up before they were awake, and it was shit. Like, it was really bad. So I quit all of it one day. I applied for a job at an Indian casino in Florence, Oregon, and they got back to me about their background check process, which takes like 8 days, and they need to know my wife's great-grandfather's illnesses. Like, it's crazy. Like, why do they care that much? I honestly, I think I could have gotten a job at the NSA more easily than I did. But I mean, I was dealing $1, $2 blackjack, so yeah, there's a lot on the line. So I got there to the casino, and I was dealing poker, and I was dealing blackjack, and how many people played poker in a casino? Poker casino people, yeah? So like what you will notice is that the dealers change every half hour, right? And the reason that they're doing that is not so much that the dealers, that the casino out of the goodness of their heart wants to give the dealer a break. But if a dealer deals for more than 30 minutes, they start to lose money. They start to make mistakes. And when you make mistakes in a big poker hand, that can be pretty expensive for the casino because some giant money bags player walks off. And they don't gamble anymore at your casino. So you would get a break every half hour. At my casino. If you have more tables, sometimes you'll go through these 4 tables and then take a break or whatever it is, right? But at ours, we had 1 table most of the time, maybe 2 tables. I was a half hour on, half hour off, sometimes on 16-hour shifts. So when I was in the back of the house, I would sit down and I would program. And I started teaching myself Ruby. This is actual Ruby. I think it's French. Meine Klasse, method and definition, yeah? Or is it Canadian? Does anyone, where's Adrian? It's French-Canadian, that's what it is, okay. French-Canadian programming. They even code over in French-Canada. So programming this way was actually really good for me because it taught me very early on that I loved Pomodoros. I really liked that where you code for a half an hour and then you do something else for a half an hour that occupies your attention and is not code and not talking about code and not thinking about code. And for me, it was an invaluable introduction to being able to control my attention. And it was kind of a first for me. Like, that's not a thing that I'm great at my whole life. So when I learned that I could focus for a period of time and then defocus intentionally and come back to it later, it was a pretty powerful change for me. So I was doing this, I was programming half the time, and I was playing poker half the time. And unsurprisingly, I fell in love with Ruby. And I think that's how a lot of people came to it eventually. You played with a little bit of Ruby, and you loved it, and you kept going. And so I eventually parted ways with the casino, and I woke up one day in the morning. I was doing this HTML brochureware stuff like I was talking about. So I was on Craigslist. I had like an RSS feed alert system that would tell me when anyone in the country posted that they wanted some HTML brochureware. I was pretty hardcore. And then I would get an RSS thing, and like a lot of them said Ruby in them. And a lot of them said Rails in them. And so I woke up one morning and I turned to my wife, Becky, and I was like, so I'm going to be a Ruby on Rails engineer. She's like, what is that? And I was like, I have no idea, but these guys make a lot of money. Look at this, right? And I loved Ruby. I really did. But I had only written like a little poker hand simulator. You know, I had no idea what I was doing or what I was getting into. This woman is a saint, if that wasn't clear yet. My wife, Becky, is amazing. Those of you who were here to remember when I stood on stage and shocked my brain for your all amusement, yeah, that was good times. Yes! Jonan loses brain cells. Woo! My wife was sitting front and center watching that happen. Can you imagine what that feels like? To be like, oh, don't lose that brain that we depend on for our livelihood, please. Right? This poor woman, please give Becky a hug the next time you see her. I do now. All right, so Becky, as I kind of alluded to before I had to move on too quickly, because it was a dark time in my life, and Becky changed things a lot for me. And she sparked this kind of, this is a growth curve for Jonan's life after meeting Becky. And you can tell it's really good because it's got these transparent bricks on it. And that, I feel like it's kind of gold, that means good things. So I became really pretty ambitious and driven and motivated. And like I said, I was working 100 hours a week, like over-the-top dangerous kind of working hard, right? And then I found out I was going to have my son, Tavin. This is Tavin with just a couple books he was going to read before he went to bed. By a couple, I mean all of them. That's every book, I think, that Tavin owned at the time. He's got actually quite a lot more by now. This Oshabari Ehon, is Akira in here anywhere? He maybe left. There he is. The Oshabari Ehon in the front here is a Japanese book for little kids to read. My host mother sent it to me. And my son, Tavin, says every night, Daddy, can we read the Spanish book? And I can't say no. He loves Spanish so much. So I found out I was going to have Tavin. I wanted to be a Ruby on Rails engineer. My son was 3 weeks old at this point, and so naturally my wife agreed to move the entire family across the state to Bend, Oregon from Florence. And I came to G5 over here, where I met some of my best friends in the world. And G5 was a really good learning experience for me. I started on the front end there making herb templates, which was like kind of like that PHP stuff. I tried that one time, but actually not as terrible. Again, like PHP people, go with your bad selves. It is awesome. Like, build your dreams. But for me, it was not a passion. So I would hang out late at work, and I would work on these herb templates, and I would write my CSS, and I was particularly good at making them work in IE6. Thank you. Yeah. I know, yeah. Useless skills. Okay. And I would hang out late at night with this guy, Chris Craybill. Has anyone met Chris? Crabes? Yeah. Chris Craybill is a really good man, and I would stay late at night, and I would talk to Chris about how he should make me a software engineer, because I could type HTML and stuff. And Chris kind of fell for it after a while. Like I said, I was kind of a workaholic. I've been a workaholic for a long time, and I would stay really late, and I would talk to Chris and Dan Hoban, the CEO at the time, and I would be like, hey, you should have like an apprentice program for people who are tall and beautiful. And eventually they let me into the house, right? And I got to come and play. And the man who was responsible for that is here tonight. That's Kobe Ranquist. So Kobe got me my first job offer as an apprentice software engineer at G5, which was awesome. I learned so much, and I talked about how much I knew, way more than I knew anything. But it was a really good learning experience for me. It was like, honestly, the first professional office environment I'd ever worked in. And beyond that, I was learning software with some really good friends. And so it went, I think, reasonably well. Except then this guy came along. Anyone know Colton? Colton Fent was hired as an apprentice software engineer because he had done Ruby koans. And I was an apprentice software engineer, and I could write HTML. I could do IE6. This wasn't going to stand, right? I don't have to take that from Colton. He had just started programming. I'm serious. And so I went to Kobe, and Kobe was like, fine, dude, I don't care about job titles. Why are you being a jerk? And then he took the apprentice off my job title, and I became a software engineer. Yes, good job, me. All right. Probably didn't deserve it. I had no idea what I was doing. But they kept paying me. It was really nice of them. And then I went to this place called Hungry Academy. Hungry Academy was a 5-month-long intensive developer training program at Living Social. And it was a paid program. There were 600 applicants. They accepted 24 of us, 6 who had some programming experience and 18 who did not. And then we all sat down and we learned to code. In true Jonan style, 16 hours a day for 5 months. And this is mostly where I lived. Has anyone ever seen this before? This is the subway in DC. Yes. Quentin knows that. So this DC subway system, I would hang out here and I would look at all the people who were sad that they couldn't become president. And it was another, like, it reminded me of working in casinos where you're watching people just like whittle away their children's inheritance pennies at a time so someone will bring them Coke. And not that kind of Coke. The thing is, like, I did, again, that thing that I had been doing for a long time where I didn't see my family, like, at all. I saw my family one day a week on Saturdays. And my son, at this point, I think he was like 2. My daughter was 4, maybe, 2 and 4. And I was going to work in the morning before they woke up, and I would come home after they were asleep. And sleep 8 hours, because I needed my 8 hours, and I was eating healthy, and I was exercising, but all of it was outside of the scope of, like, my real life. And then I would come on the weekends on Saturday, and we would do something awesome. Like, we had the best time going out to the aquarium or whatever. And then Sundays were for homework, and I did it again. And it was a pretty tough 5 months. And I wouldn't have been able to do it without my Pomodoro friend. And by this point, I have made clear this is a recurring theme, and the point is this, that those 16 hours a day don't happen. Like, no one survives that for that long if you don't cut yourself a little bit of slack. You don't come up for air. You don't take that break, right? And for me, my breaks along the way have come in a lot of different forms. This is one of them right here. Like, this is me on a Pomodoro break with you. And all of those things that I talked about up until now that brought me here to Ruby on Nails were really just to say that you need to cut yourself some slack. Like, it's really easy for us because we are driven and motivated people to fill our days to the brim, right? With code and with friends and community organizing and on and on and on and on, right? I do the same thing right now. I work at New Relic, and they get their, fair share of my time, and then I go off and organize a meetup, or I speak at a conference, or I MC a conference, or, the list goes on. And I don't get my fair share of my time right now. My family doesn't either, but I'm fixing it. Like, it's getting better. And part of the way it's getting better for me is by building useless things. This is Mousetrap. Isn't that awesome? Did you guys play this board game? I loved Mousetrap. Somebody built it. This is like a maker fair where someone built a full-size Mousetrap, right? Mousetrap was the full-size. Yeah, we don't need your input anymore, intern. No, we're good. Yeah. I love you, Colton. Okay, so I want to come back to this theme here, that this is like how I relax. This is what I do for no reason. And it's really important to me to do things for no reason, because for so long, I was like spun up to 1,000, and I was reading 3 technical books at a time, and I was online, and I'm programming all the time, and it made me better. Like, to be sure, it got me where I am today, right? But you've got to leave room in your life for passion. It's really important. So my passion of late looks like this. These are my robots. They're cute, I think. And this is Bobo and Robo, and I'm going to see, they're probably not going to come out, actually, because they have a myriad of problems, not the least of which is narcolepsy. They seriously do. It's a kind of a problem, because what they do, actually, is I've got these high-tech batteries that I'm going to tell you about later that will check the power draw on the systems and then turn themselves off if there's not enough power draw. So if the Raspberry Pi is not doing enough work, the battery turns off, which is awesome. So my solution is to like spin up in background a Ruby thread that just adds numbers together. How do you like your work now, battery? All right. So I don't know if they'll actually drive. They're not driving, so I'm going to have to go backstage, and this is going to be sucky. But I got to walk back there, and I got to get them, actually, because they're stuck behind the curtain here. Actually, I may be able to SSH back into them. They should be connected to my... No, they're down. Okay. So this is the old Raspberry Pi that I had. It's got one little Wi-Fi adapter in the bottom. I also intended these things to have Bluetooth and to be able to plug into the Legos themselves, and then to have another input for the microphone is the other thing. So this is the Pi that I ordered, the Pi 2, which just came out and is awesome and way faster, 3 times faster. No flash photography, please. If you actually take a flash photo of one of these with a xenon bulb, it just resets, reboots the whole thing. That's probably what happened to my friend over here. Robo's not even trying. I use these Edimax Wi-Fi adapters. They're great. If you do anything that you need a Wi-Fi adapter for, you should use those. The Bluetooth ones, I don't think it really matters. I got like the cheapest Bluetooth one on Amazon, and then learned that it does matter. The people who make these, if they don't get official MAC addresses, will ship you like multiples with the same MAC address, and then it's this hassle where you got to go and hack the MAC address on the Bluetooth deal so that you can connect them and get the RSSI reading, which I'll talk about in a moment. And I use this mic, the Kinobo mic. This is what the Jasper project. It's a Python voice recognition software thing for the Raspberry Pi. That's what they recommended, so I bought those. And I got little speakers so that they could talk and sing and dance, or one of them could. And then I got these godforsaken batteries, and I shouldn't have done it. Yeah, I mean, there's like a $15 option that is 3 times more powerful, but doesn't have these key-enabled charging pads on the side, so it can charge wirelessly. And it was super important to me that my robots be able to juice themselves up for the coming apocalypse. So, like, I couldn't get them to line up to plug in a cord, right? But if they can just touch a pad to a pad, then they're good. So, there's Renee. Aww, I love the giggles. Okay. So these actually have a wireless charging thing on the back, and they have one on the front, and they're incredibly intelligent batteries. Do not use them. That's called a Keystone Plus. Sorry, Keystone. I want my money back. This is a Pololu sensor, Pololu. I bought them on Ada. She just keeps going. It's so awesome. I bought them on Adafruit, and they're about $7 a piece. And this is what I was going to use to do distance sensing because I needed to be able to have a way to tell when these guys were going to bump into something. So you can see I'm a professional solderer. Yeah, is that pretty good, right? Look at that. What you do when you're soldering, you just keep adding solder until it starts to smoke and crack a little bit. And then you're done, finished. So if you have any soldering questions, hit me up. I also used this wiring thing that I had, these wiring jack deals. They're not very interesting, except that they plug into the GPIO pins. GPIO is super interesting, actually. You can just turn them on or off. From the software side, you can trigger a GPIO pin or check its value. And it's just a simple switch like this one here with the battery and the resistor. And I'm going to gloss over the bit here, but if you want to go to Pi2 GPIO, you can look at an interactive GPIO pin map for the Raspberry Pi 2, and it's pretty sweet, actually. You can get the voltage off all these things and learn how to use them. So I want to talk about a couple of Ruby gems that are built in there. One of them is Pi Piper. It's written by a guy named Jason Whitehorn. Thank you, Jason. Pi Piper is awesome. It's event-driven GPIO gem for Ruby. So you can install this Pi Piper gem, and then you can get events from your GPIO pins when they trigger, which is especially helpful. Lego Next is the gem that communicates with the Lego brick underneath the robot and drives it around. That was written by a guy named Christian Hultier, if I said that correctly. You can just call him Christian, also, he says. But it's a German name. You should call him Christian. He's awesome. And he wrote this gem called Lego Next. I wrote an example piano for it, one of my finest open source contributions. And I also open sourced the code that's in these things. You should probably not use this for anything, like, ever. It's really bad. But I'm going to show some of it to you anyway. So this is like the forward for the brick. So the brick can only take a forward and then a stop. You don't actually get to run the motors for a duration. So I had to write this Robolove gem is just kind of a little wrapper around it so that I can run the two motors that I want, the left and the right motor, for a speed, and then I can sleep for a duration, and then I can stop them, right? So I can call forward with no arguments at all, and it just runs the motors for 1 second and then stops the motors, which is kind of useful, actually. And then I can use this other gem that I wrote, or it's not a gem, just another project, Secret Droid, to drive the motors on those things, but I have to do it, and this is where things get real dicey. I have to do it in threads. I've got to spin up a thread for those motors so that I can kill them, right? Because the robots are supposed to have object avoidance built into them, and so if you are going to run off of a cliff, you should probably just kill it right now, like thread.killstop. Not like, well, we'll see in a second where you are, and then we'll decide if we're going to keep going. So when I call drive, what I do is I kill the current thing. Whatever you were doing, stop that thing. And then I set the direction so that I can figure out where I am in case I have to do some object avoidance. And then I log about it because this is infinitely buggy code. And then I set the new current action to a new forward driving action thing. So the reason this is all important is red alerts. That's a thing that happens in these. Yes, see, people got the red alert. All right. Red alerts are raised when the robot sees a thing or is about to die, and I need to rescue it. And so when a red alert comes up, it has like a little avoidance procedure that it uses to not die instead of die. Speaking of, this is really kind of macabre, but this is a priority queue implementation. Did anyone ever think of that? These tags where you get apparently this is used more commonly in the military, but it's a triage tag, like when you go to the ER because you lost your voice and you want medicine because you got to MC Ruby on Rails. And there's poor people there who are really hurting, and you insist to go to the front of the line, and they throw you out, which was pretty unreasonable, actually, a bunch of jerks. That's because of triage, that I didn't get to go see someone in the ER. I didn't actually do that. That would be terrible. This is a priority queue is an implementation where you put something onto a queue with a priority as well. So things that have a priority of 0 will be processed before things that have a priority of 1. Very popular implementation of this would be rescue, something, I guess, it's actually separate queues in that case, but you can think along those lines, like high, low, and medium priority. So I was going to use all of this so that the robots could play hide and seek, like this cat hiding in the couch. I just needed a picture of a cat in the presentation. And then they would hopefully not drive off of cliffs because they would have this autopilot built into them. And the autopilot is dependent on these 4 sensors that I bought, those below the sensors, triggering the GPIO pins. And when they trigger a GPIO pin alert, then I know to stop the thing and do something else. So if I'm driving forward, for example, and a red alert comes up, then I will back up and turn right, and like that. Now, interesting implementation detail. These sensors don't work on black surfaces. In case anyone's building some robots for a conference sometime, you should know. So I got those Bluetooth dongle deals there, right, that I was showing you. And I was going to use the Bluetooth to do distance sensing. It's called an RSSI reading, and that's a received signal strength indicator. You can use that to decide how far apart the robots are, right? Except that the RSSI reading for 2 Bluetooth receivers that are in the range of 0 to 40 feet is 0. These are pretty strong, as it turns out, so it doesn't matter at all. Like, I couldn't use these for hide and seek, unless hide and seek is a version where you can be 40 feet away and or through a wall or ceiling. And that counts as found, right? Found you, Ruby on Rails, all of you. So hide and seek was kind of busted. That wasn't going to work. And then I had this theory, well, I'll just use echolocation, kind of like everyone finds Renee at a conference. So the microphones came into the picture, and I was going to have one of them say something cute or play a song or tell a story, and then the other one would find it based on the noise. The problem with that is the way I would implement that is by taking the maximum amplitude of the sound through the mic. So the mic records a sample 1 second long, takes the maximum amplitude over that 1 second, and decides whether or not it's closer to the robot or not. As anyone who has ever heard music, for example, knows, volume varies wildly throughout a song. So a given 1 second sample is not guaranteed to be closer or farther by that measure. So what I would have had to do is have one of them sit here and screech while the other one went for probably 5-10 minutes. And in the end, they don't work anyway, so it's fine. Like, you know? So the echolocation was out, and so I wrote this prompt. I wrote a CLI for it, and the CLI lets me do some cool stuff by reading characters one at a time. Has anyone ever used a cooked thing on this standard in like that? You can call cooked on standard in and turn it into cooked mode, or raw and turn it into raw mode. And these modes are modes of input that, for example, if you've switched your keyboard around and you are in cooked mode, your operating system will change things for you before you actually get the input to your program. And if you put it in raw mode, you won't get those fixes, right? Dvorak users, when you push Q, what does that normally do? Anyone here use Dvorak? It's quote. That's single quote. God, Dvorak is weird. You guys are weirdos. Okay. Well, I'm awfully judgy today. I'm sorry. So the result would be if you were in Dvorak mode, you would get a Q, and you would have wanted a single quote. I believe that is the difference between a cooked and a raw terminal implementation. So what I've done here is I turn off the echo so that we don't repeat the things that are happening. You can play with that. It's kind of annoying, actually, because as soon as you type standard in.echo equals false, you stop seeing the output of your keystrokes. It's difficult to figure out what's happening. But then you put it into raw mode, and you get those raw characters, and you capture the input. And then if the first input is a modifier key, like a shift or control, then I will read in a non-blocking way 3 more bytes or then 2 more bytes. And the reason I'm doing that is so I can have multi-key combos to control the robot. So if I hold shift, only one of them drives. And if I hold option, the other one drives. Or in this particular case, neither of them drive because they went to sleep again. Thanks, batteries. Why is everything terrible in the whole world? Can we just, oh, look, there he goes. Yay, he still drives. I guess that's a win. So I'm using Redis to communicate with these robots. They're on the Wi-Fi network on my phone, and Redis is running on this laptop over here so that they can all 3 be on the same Wi-Fi network and then connect to the local. I just bound Redis, in this case, to 0000, so it's open on the local Wi-Fi network. And yes, my phone's Wi-Fi network has a password, hacksaws. I'm not telling. Please stop. Okay. This is how you use Redis. I understood a little earlier today that there were a lot of people here who were pretty new to this programming stuff, or especially to Ruby on Rails. So I thought I would give a primer for one of the coolest things about Redis, which is pub/sub stuff. So you can publish this way to the MTV channel, and then anyone who is listening on that channel will get that message, and they can do a thing about it. And I am really well over time and have been super mean about it the whole conference, so I'm trying to hurry. If you have questions about PubSub, we can do that another time. This is the microphone that I used, and the way that I'm using them now is actually to listen for the other robot to finish speaking before I speak, because the robots talk to each other. And they have a little story that they would like to tell. I'm changing mics. On your toes, John. Anyone? No? Hey, it worked. Okay. So they actually will talk to each other and tell a story that came from Cleverbot. Has anyone ever used cleverbot.com? Yeah, Cleverbot's pretty sweet, right? So Cleverbot actually, they don't provide an API officially. There are some gems that you can use to get Cleverbot data, but nobody likes you if you do that. Specifically, cleverbot.com does not like you if you do that. And they go out of their way to make your life hard, and they ban you, and they inject ads, and everything is terrible. So I promise cleverbot.com that I used your website as it was meant to be, and I went there and just clicked the button over and over again for an hour. And what I was doing is I was typing a thing to Cleverbot, and then Cleverbot would respond to me, and I would type the same thing back to Cleverbot. Gosh, Legos are terrible for everything. Why would I have done this? You'd think I would learn eventually not to just use Legos to build everything. This is like the third year in a row I've had. It's ridiculous nonsense. Okay, so that's turned on again. Maybe this one will work too. We'll see. If not, we're just going to skip this whole piece. But on the off chance that this happens, let's try it one time. So they're driving. The other one's not driving because I haven't hooked it up yet. So I went into Cleverbot. I took notes on what Cleverbot was doing, and I used that to build a script for the two of them to use. And so the two robots will talk to each other about lovey-cutesy things, assuming that I can SSH into Robo, and I can't. Robo's dead, and that's really sad, because it was kind of cute. But that's okay. Life goes on. I would have loved to show you this little love story. I'll flip through the slides in 1 second. I just want to double-check that this guy is on. They have to be pretty close, too, so that they can hear each other and not speak over each other. And when that happens, and I'm able to connect, maybe, do you think it's more likely that SSH is broken or my robot is broken? SSH? I was thinking SSH too. Thanks, guys. Yeah. I knew it. God, SSH. So buggy. House of Cards. Who uses SSH? Okay. Wait, oh, no, it worked. Oh, it worked. Maybe it'll work. This is my only hope. I promise after this, I'll be done. They just have to talk to each other because it's kind of cute. And so if I type S.
I love you. Yes, I will marry you. Will you marry me?
Oh, yes, I will marry you.
When will the wedding be? Our wedding will be today. Will you be my wife? Yes,
Are you asking me to marry you? Yes, I am asking. The reason this is happening is because we're laughing and they're waiting for us to finish.
Yes, I will marry you. To be the bride or the groom?
Do you want me to marry the groom? Maybe they'll fix themselves.
I hope we are together forever. Asterisk blushes, asterisk, you make me blush a lot. Do you have an Imbu account? Do you have a ski jacket? No. Do you have a sister? You want to have a sister? I want to marry you.
Oh, yes.
Ask me if I want to marry you. Will you marry me? Will you buy me a Ferrari? Only if you marry me. Yes, I will marry you.
Aww.
Do you want to have kids? Well, you can have a child with me. I want to have 3 children. Why do you want 5 children? I want more than 5 children. Because I want to turn into a robot. I want to talk about music.
And now they're on top of each other with their statements. So these are really just canned.
Okay, then what do you want to talk about?
they want to talk about summer. I think they're going to be out of sync for the rest of the time. It's going to be awkward because we've only got 20 more slides of this.
Whatever you want to talk about, what you want to talk about.
So again, this is Cleverbot talking to itself.
I said I want to talk about our date. Want to talk about.
Wait, I think they're going to sync. Renee, not now.
I want to talk about whatever you want to talk about.
You guys are ruining everything, and it's hilarious.
I want to talk about whatever you want to talk about. No, I want to talk about whatever you want to talk about. Well, I want to talk about what you want to talk about.
They do get stuck, sometimes in Spanish.
Well, I don't want to talk about that. Well, what do you want to talk about then? I want to talk about whatever you want to talk about. No, I want
Yeah, no, it just keeps going. They're not actually stuck. I'm not using a live API. I promise it's a script, and it ends. There's Renee.
I don't know. What do you want to talk
Just keep it under 0.2 decibels, okay? Seriously. Okay, thanks. That's what just happened that we missed. I want to point out the spinning behavior. That's a libUSB seg fault. Thank you so much.